Way back on July 19th of 2009, I woke up just as I had woken up many days before that, wondering what in the world I was going to do to combat the situation I'd found myself in called drug addiction. I very much so had the want to not live the way that I was living, but I lacked the willingness to do anything about it. And why would I have the willingness to do anything about it? Because my family had always been there to protect me from my fall. That changed that day. I went into my probation officer's office looking all gray and crazy, gonna tell her how good I was doing, and she said, "Sam, I've got something for you." And it was my family in another room with 2 deputies and an old interventionist. No one said a word except the old interventionist. And he said, "Sam, you're dying of a cocaine addiction. Got 2 options today. One of those involves going with me to Texas, where you're gonna be entered into a treatment program for at least a year. Or you can go with these 2 deputies and you can go to prison today. What's your choice to be?" I sat there and thought for a while and figured I was out of options. I certainly didn't want to go to prison. So off I went, saying goodbye to my family once again, waving out the back glass of his Cadillac to my 2 sons. Oh, that was the worst day of my life, but what it turned out to be was the greatest gift that anyone could have ever given me. When we got to the airport, I told that interventionist, I said, "Man, I'm not getting on that airplane unless I have a couple of drinks." And he had been doing this a long time, and he knew he didn't know what he was going to get if he was to give me alcohol, but he knew what he would get if he was to give me some Valium, and he kept some on him, and he gave me a couple. I remember sitting on that airplane, peering through my bloodshot eyes, looking at him going, "Man, I'd like to do what he does one day," not having any idea in this world that would ever happen. I was in that treatment program 2 weeks shy of a year. It changed my life. I worked all 12 steps, lived and breathed the 12 steps, along with really good clinical work, great trauma work, and phenomenal family work. My family held their ground. I walked out of that treatment program 2 weeks shy of a year against staff advice. And by all measures, I wasn't supposed to make it because typically people that leave treatment against staff advice don't do well. My family had been done with me. It was time to sink or swim. I got into a sober living program. My family was not going to help me. I kept putting one foot in front of the other. See, I had had an experience in that treatment program. I had rebuilt my internal constitution that I used to live my life by, and I desperately did not want to go back to where I was. So, one foot in front of the other, doing God's work the best I saw that I could. My life began to unfold before me. Miracles started to happen. I was in the logging business before I went to treatment. Well, I called myself in the logging business. My dad would have to come out of retirement every so often and bail me out of a bunch of stuff. But that day of my intervention, I don't think the wheels got up on the airplane before my father had sold all my equipment and everything. I didn't even have a saw wrench when it was all said and done. So what the hell was I going to do in my life except trust God and do his work the best I thought possible? I got a job on a Mexican tree trimming crew in Austin, Texas in the middle of July. It was 114 degrees and I was making $9 an hour, hauling limbs up a hill into a wood chipper. I was the only one that spoke English. Then I got a job on Lake Travis on a party barge. And when my family found out about that, they just thought I had thrown myself to the wolves again. We took out sororities, fraternities, roller derby girls, lesbian weddings, nudist colonies, and everything in between. Everyone that worked on the boat was sober, but the people we took out were not. That was a time in my sobriety that I'll never forget because I experienced freedom. I experienced the promises of those 12 steps where they say you will recoil from it as from a hot flame. And I certainly did. Still didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was just living in the moment. And then because I kept putting one foot in front of the other and doing God's will the best I could, an opportunity opened up for me to work at a treatment program that had just opened. It was a 90-day, open for the right reasons, excellent care. I found out I was pretty good at it. Started as an overnight detox tech, worked my way into being able to run some family groups. And it was suggested to me that maybe I should become an interventionist. The reason I'm saying all this is because on this day, June 24th of 2011, I made my way back to Virginia to this very porch right here to be united with my family. They were a little standoffish in me, understandably. My son, he didn't know how to be around me. He didn't know how to take me. He certainly didn't trust me, and he had no reason to trust me. I was in and out of his life. You know, every time I promised my son that I wasn't going to walk out of his life again previously, I meant it from the bottom of my heart, but I couldn't pull it off. It took a long time for him to understand that when Dad said he was going to do something, he could trust that Dad was going to do it. And I didn't know what the hell I was going to do in my life. It had been suggested to me to, hey, maybe you'd be a good interventionist. Maybe you should get trained. So 2 weeks after being here and back home, reunited with my family, off again, I went to New York to be trained as an interventionist. I was up there for 3 days, moved back home, and was under supervision for 6 months. And I hung out my shingle saying Sam Davis Interventions. I sat there and twiddled my thumbs for a long time, waiting on the phone to ring. But God, being who he is, did what he does, and that is put the work right in my lap. Tell you what, that day, July 19th, 2009, I thought was the worst day of my life. But it was absolutely the best thing that my family could have ever done for me. It set me free. It absolutely 100% set me free. And I thank God for him every day.